For labs 4 and 6 for the SURT1701 clinical orientation course, we take the students to the hospitals for observations for about 2 hours. Now, our labs normally run from 8 to 12:30 on the Lincoln campus, so I generally take the students at 7 in the morning so that they can watch the initial cases that are being performed for that day. You guys are going to have to figure out how it works for you to best do that, to get that experience into the operating room. But I generally take them for about 2 hours, 2.5 hours, just depending on the caseload and also the experience that they need to get while they're there. So when they are in the hospital for those 2 hours, 2.5 hours, I have some specific questions that I want them to focus on. So when you look at the week 4 in the progression notebook, behind that it's going to talk about the hospital observation for week 4, and you're going to see a listing there of just some various different unsterile activities that the students could help out with while they're there. When they've been in the hospital before, it was very early on in their education and they really didn't know much to be able to help out in the unsterile role. So when they're there this time, we really would like them to start to apply some of the knowledge that they've learned so far. So they can definitely help out with opening the room, tying the backs of gowns, helping to position the patient, gathering blankets for the patient, whatever they might be able to help out with in the unsterile role. At this point, we really don't want them scrubbing in at all. We just want them getting used to the environment and also seeing some of the concepts that we're learning about in the SURT 1701 course applied in the actual operating room. So that first time that they go during week 4, then on the back side of this, you can see that there are some questions that I would like them to focus on, and they correlate with the information that we are learning about in the course at that time. So the first time that they go, I want them watching the team. So we've been learning a lot about duties, who's responsible for what, and who does what during the procedure. And also just talking a lot about how the team interacts with each other. So these bullet points will give them some topics to focus on. These students, they're like a kid in a candy store when you put them in the OR. If you don't give them something to focus on, they're going to be very excited and they're going to see a lot of things, but they're not really going to be focusing on the specific things that they've been learning about. So as there, I would like them to focus on these questions and possibly be able to answer some of them. So look at the team, identify who's there, identify who's doing what, watch how they communicate with each other. Are there any breakdowns in communication, and how that interaction helps to provide the patient the best care that they possibly can. Okay, also I definitely want them to take a look at the preference card in the OR, which for you guys, that may be what you've been practicing it with in the lab, and that's fine, that'll be great. Then they'll be very much oriented to that already, but I want them to be able to look at the preference card, identify what's open and hold, and get that information off the preference card. I want them to also watch what members of the team use the preference card and just how it's used to help the individuals when they're setting up for the case to position the supplies and also pull the instruments and equipment that will be needed for that case. And then finally, I just want them to kind of reflect on their experience. So what they liked, what they didn't like, how it was different than what they expected, any of those kinds of things. So after that, I have the students just write a short reflection paper, which is going to be due by the following week. There's no length requirement. They just need to cover the 3 different areas. I don't grade it on grammar, punctuation, anything like that. It's just to get them focused on specific things and have them actually apply the information that we've been learning in class in more of an abstract concept, so they can actually see it happening. Those papers count then for 10 of their participation points that go into that 5 percentage points for their lab participation. If you go to week 6, you see the same type of description. So again, we go for 2 hours to the OR, and then after that, you're going to see the exact same information about what they can help out with. But when we go week 6, I have different areas that I want them to focus on. So I want them to watch the draping and answer, what position, what drapes, what order were the drapes put on, who put the drapes on, what aseptic principles were applied. And then also I want them to look at the back tables. Does the back table look like the table that we've been setting up in the lab, or is it different, and why is it different? You know, just starting to look at some of those table setups, and then again, just a short reflection on their experience. And again, they'll write a reflection paper that will be due by the following week's lab. So again, that counts as 10 points of their lab participation points. Again, no length requirement, not graded on grammar or punctuation, anything like that, simply that they've covered the 3 areas that they're supposed to be watching while they're there. Okay, so after those 2 hours on weeks 4 and week 6, then we come back to the lab and we start the setup for the laparoscopic competency assessment. So again, you'll want to view the videos, which are going to be available in the Moodle course for the laparoscopic setup. And then you would go to that section in the progression notebook, so which is going to be after the laparotomy in the laparoscopic section, or we call it lap col E2. But then again, we're going to start the setup for that. So again, I would demonstrate, and you will demonstrate for the students, the setup. So going through the case cart, opening the supplies, all those kinds of things, all the way up through the setup of the Mayo stand. Again, attempting to describe to the students why you're doing everything, having them give you information about the skills that they have already learned, such as opening the back table, putting on the gown and gloves, those kinds of things. So trying to get them to describe to you the knowledge that they already have, and then the new information, you are teaching it to them and trying to teach them the specifics of why we are doing the things that we are doing. Okay, on week 6, then I generally have them come into the operating room or into the lab, have them set up through the Mayo stand, and then once we get to the Mayo, then I'll show them the second half of the competency assessment. So all the way up through the performance of the closing count, including the draping, the attachment of the cords, all those kinds of things for the laparoscopic setup, so that then they see that, and then again, they are allowed to have that time then to demonstrate the rest of those new skills that they have learned up through that point. And then if they have time, then they'll run through it again, just depending on how much time and how many students you have in the lab that are with you. So again, just trying to break that laparoscopic setup up into manageable chunks, demonstrating it for them, allowing them to have time to practice, and then adding more skills on, allowing them to demonstrate the whole thing from the beginning up through what you have taught them, and just trying to break it down into chunks to allow them to not be so overwhelmed by the information, but to just build on what they've learned from the time before. Again, watching them and watching their aseptic technique, pointing it out to them, utilizing teachable moments for when things happen, a gown rips, something falls on the floor, you know, making sure that everybody's listening when other individuals may have made a mistake or encountered a situation that other people can learn from. So just making sure that you're pointing out those various different aseptic breaks that can occur, and just offering ways to correct the contamination immediately.